Hi everybody, and welcome to the third in the series of the Radical Art History talks. Pam Johnson will be speaking today on the Radical Art History of Contemporary Dance from Isadora Duncan to Contact Improvisation. She'll be speaking for about 45 minutes, and included in that time is a short performance. And after that, we'll have discussion, open to the group, and then we'll have some refreshments so people can chat afterwards. Pam is a dancer, choreographer, and a teacher. She's coordinator of the Toronto Contact Jam, the longest continuously running contact jam in the world, an anti-war activist, and an active member of her trade union. And I'll go ahead to you. Thanks.
And thanks everybody for coming out. And this Radical Art History series, we've mainly looked at specific periods. We've looked at Quebec artists in the 40s around the Quiet Revolution and workers' theater in the 1930s. But for this presentation, I want to look at really the whole history of contemporary dance. It's about 100 years old. It was birthed around the beginning of the 20th century. And the reason is that within the Western theatrical dance tradition, contemporary dance has continued to be the location for challenging the status quo in dance, and it's also been the location where dance artists have felt that they could engage the social and political issues of their day. And I will unfortunately not be able to go into each period deeply as it would deserve, but hopefully this will be a spark for people to do their own research. Also, I will be talking really specifically about North America, although there was a parallel development of contemporary dance in Germany with an equally fascinating history, which unfortunately I won't have time to touch on. So I think the first question is, what is contemporary dance? And that's incredibly hard to define because it's being continually redefined by the artists who do it. The main hallmark of contemporary dance is that it is not associated with a particular technique or movement vocabulary like ballet is, and ballet is kind of the comparison point in Western art dance. And so with no sort of codified steps, choreography is created sort of from the felt sense of the artist. Often the desire is to capture a mood, an emotion, or an idea, rather than to show technical virtuosity. And an early critic who looked at ballet and modern dance and was a theorist of dance, John Martin, said, "Ballet is spectacle and modern dance is expressional." And the term modern dance is kind of the old term, and it's actually now being more regularly used to actually refer to a specific group in this period, the modern dancers, and most particularly that's associated with Margaret Ram, who's a name I think probably people have heard of. And today, contemporary dance really can include a lot of things, everything from very simple pedestrian movement to extreme athletic movement. All kinds of music, text, spoken word, video. It can be done in theaters, on the street, and sometimes even in somebody's backyard. So it has very, very broad definition of what it is. Over its 100 years of existence, it's continued also to struggle to be seen as a legitimate art form. And although it's really interesting that it was, to me, that it was a category, and so you think you could dance Canada, always when they did the barefoot dancing, that was the contemporary. It still receives really a fraction of the public funding that ballet receives. And there really is no getting away from this ballet contemporary dance comparison. And it's been sort of the high art, low art debate with contemporary dance as sort of the new interloper pushing in, trying to become a legitimate high art form. And it's also no coincidence that contemporary dance carries a sort of the aura of radicalness. The most famous progenitor of the form, Isadora Duncan, very, very consciously rebelled against the ballet and theatrical dance of her day. She called it spectacle, and she said it trivialized both the dance and the mainly female dancers. This is kind of where I want to begin the talk, because in the process of putting forward her ideas about dance, Duncan found herself grappling with much bigger social and political issues, particularly the role of women in society and the unequal nature of the capitalist economic system. And indeed, the whole period of the birth and establishment of contemporary dance as a form happened in the context of social and political upheaval that was the period in the beginning of the 1900s to the 1930s. And this is especially located in North America. So Isadora Duncan, she was an American, and her greatest influence would be on the who were establishing the form, mostly in New York City. But she really found her fame in Europe. Her influence as a cultural figure is, in general, is really huge. And although she died in 1927, her name is still quite familiar to most people. She's mostly remembered because of her exotic and controversial stage presentations and lifestyle. She started performing her solo shows around 1902, so very much just the very end of the Victorian period. She danced barefoot and in loose clothing, a complete scandal in this era. She had many lovers, she bore children out of wedlock, she spoke against the institution of marriage, and at the height of her fame, she went to establish a dance school in revolutionary Russia. And finally, she died spectacularly at the age of 47 when she was strangled by her own scarf in the wheel of a convertible Bugatti driven by her much younger lover. So she was quite a figure. She was quite celebrated in her day, especially by other artists. And in the 80 years since her death, numerous books, articles, and films have been made about her life and her art. And there are still dance companies that dance in her style today. And Duncan had a gigantic vision of dance and movement in the human body. She believed that humans, to develop fully, have to be as engaged with their movement and kinesthetic experience as they are with their minds. And this is kind of embodied in one of her most famous sayings, that the goal for human development is the highest intelligence in the freest body. She developed a critical theory and philosophy about dance and society that's really, I think, unrivaled in its breadth and depth. She wrote more extensively than almost any other dancer since about her aesthetics, her practice, and the place that she believed dance should occupy in human experience. In her effort to promote the idea of dance as an important part of human development and education, she was pushed to challenge the conventions inside of dance. So she left no technique and almost no visual representation of her work, and in fact she danced before film was really a technology that was regularly used. She danced from a felt sense of how her body moves, which she often compared to movement in nature, like waves. She believed the most important goal of the artist was expression rather than form. She said, "I don't believe in the narrow bourgeois formula of art for art's sake. Art must be based upon and flow from life." And acting upon her vision often brought her into conflict with the norms of late Victorian society. Her idea of the beauty of the unadorned human body and its movement brought her into direct conflict with the idea of the place of women and who they were in society. So this was the very end of the Victorian era, and really just at the advent of the first wave of feminists, the suffragettes, and they were just really getting going politically. She went on stage barefoot, uncorseted, without makeup, and sometimes visibly pregnant. She was not thin. She had a very full figure, which she did not hide. And she was very consciously using her celebrity to project a new image for women. She said, "If my art is symbolic of any one thing, it is symbolic of the freedom of women and her emancipation from hidebound conventions." And she also used her platform to regularly speak against the institution of marriage. "I am absolutely, unutterably, and vehemently opposed to all legal marriage." Well before this would have been a popular statement. And although it would be going too far to say that she had a specific set of political beliefs, she was aware of and sympathetic to growing contradictions in society created by the expansion of the Industrial Revolution, especially in Western Europe and in the US, and that was creating a huge gap between rich and poor and leaving many people behind in the early 20th century. And she was horrified by the ravages of World War I. And although she inhabited the elite circles of the European art scene, she became sort of increasingly disgusted by its formalistic concerns with art, so nothing about the real world, but just about the form of art itself. "I'm sick of the modern theater, which resembles a house of prostitution more than a temple of art. I want to dance for the masses."